Yeah, this president, not this president.
We are calling this meeting to order. This is the seventh regular business meeting of the Pasadena Area College Board of Trustees. And we are going to go into closed session, and help me out here, El Presidente. And we're going to discuss Government Code Section 54957, Public Employee Appointment, Interim Supervisor, Facilities Services, Welcome Center Director, Supervisor, Campus Events, Interim Associate Dean, Non-Credit, Interim Director, Veterans Resource Center, Acting, Talent Search Coordinator Dean at the Rosemead site. Number 2, we are also going to discuss Government Code 54957, Employee Discipline, Dismissal, Release, 1 employee. Number 3, Government Code Section 54957.6, Conference with Labor Negotiator, Designated Negotiator, Mr. Robert Blazinski, VP Human Resources. Lastly, number 4, Government Code Section 54957, Evaluation of Employee, Superintendent. We will now adjourn to closed session and return at approximately 7 o'clock.
Excuse me, Mr.
You know why? Because I don't always want to put my glasses.
Call this meeting to order. This is the seventh regular business meeting of the Pasadena Area Community College District. And we adjourned to closed session, and in that closed session, no action was taken on any of those items. We're now moving to open session, and we will start with the roll call.
Mr. Osterling?
Here.
Mr. Hilsman?
Here.
Ms. Brown?
Here.
Ms. Chen Lao?
Here.
Dr. Fel?
Here.
Mr. Martin?
Here.
Ms. Wah? Mr. Sarkeesian?
Here.
And next we have the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'll ask our student trustee to lead us in the pledge.
All right.
Alex.
Okay, please stand. Put your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
One nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Alex. Our next item is agenda item C3. This is the approval and reordering of agenda items, and I think we have some items that we'd like to reorder.
Yes, we'd like to move item I1 to C8 and move item I2 to C9. So those are two study session presentations under section I that we'll be moving to C8 and 9.
And if you could remind me when we get there.
Yes, of course.
Thank you.
Motion to approve.
Oh, excuse me.
Hi, I'm sorry to interrupt. HGA is not here, so maybe we should leave their presentation to the end.
I tell you what we'll do, we'll leave it as moved, but then if they
Okay.
don't arrive on time, we'll push it back to where it was originally on the agenda. Is that okay?
That'd be fine, thank you.
Great.
Okay. Sandra, did you have any agenda items that you wanted to reorder?
No.
Okay, all right. Okay, so moving on, introductions and recognitions. Do we have any?
You have to vote.
I'm sorry, we have to vote. All in favor of reordering the agenda items per Superintendent Androgenis's request, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Student trustee, I should have called you out too.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries unanimously. My apologies, it's a new year. I'll get on a roll here.
It was a rough closed session.
Yeah.
It was brutal. All right, we're going to move to agenda item C5, which is public comment on non-agenda items. Do we have any public comment?
We have one.
Okay.
Mr. Alex Shaganaka, you have 3 minutes.
Morning.
Afternoon.
2014, MONSAC conducted a survey regarding the free assisted public transportation bus pass program around the campus, and then the result is 84% of students in MONSAC voted yes. So since 2014 until now, the MONSAC bus pass program has been free, and most likely they will continue to do that. I consider that is a very, very democratic approach, and I never heard or experienced any survey or conducted regarding the transportation issues, regarding the students who have a hard time to go to school, who have a hard time to go to the part-time job while in school. I would recommend, if there's possible, I don't know if we have a student service department or not, but MONSAC, they do. If we have some appropriate management department, we can try to get a survey just like the MONSAC did, and we can take a look like how many students voted yes and how many students actually need that, and then based on the result, and then we can try to improve our school U-Pass bus program. I mean, if not a lot of people voted yes, then keep everything the same, so that'll be no problem. But I wish there's some sort of a survey or reaching out is conducted in the near future. And then the spring semester is coming out, and then I really expect, I think there's no change so far regarding the bus pass. I consider at this moment the summer semester is still not covered. Hopefully, I don't know that how long is the process will take. Hopefully by 2021, 2022, maybe somewhere before 2025, something can be done regarding these issues. And looks like this time I managed my time successfully. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have one more. Skip Robinson.
Good evening. It wasn't long ago that I was here, and I hope to come at a much better time than to come to discuss the passing of one of our colleagues, and that is Coach George Turgeon, passed in December. Coach Turgeon was the men's basketball coach here at PCC from 1979 until he retired in 2004. And I don't know how many of you read about that in the Star News, but you read that he was a legendary coach, which he was. And we were very, very fortunate to get him. And I'm just going to read a few little notes I took down, because I could be here for a long time, and I know I only have a few minutes. Prior to coming to PCC in 1979, Coach Turgeon was the boys' basketball coach at Pasadena High School, where I met him in 1963 as an incoming sophomore. And he thought I was good enough to play on the basketball team, and I begged him that I was only football and track. So he said, okay, then maybe you can play in the Winter League, which I did, and I was really, really pleased to have been coached by this incredible coach, George Turgeon. And while he was at Pasadena High School, he won 2 Southern Section CIF championships and he still holds the record for the most victories at Pasadena High School. And then he came to PCC in 1979 and became the head basketball coach at PCC. And we were very fortunate in 2018 to induct him into the PCC's Athletic Hall of Fame. And I'm telling you, this man is a legend in this area. If any of you follow basketball, he had a basketball camp for the youth in this community. Just a well-respected coach and just a good man. And I'm just so pleased that I was able to be a part of his life as a student athlete, as a colleague, and for a lot of years as his boss. I did a full circle with George. And but during his career as a student athlete, he also went to PCC for a short time, but some of his inductions, he was inducted into the Southern California Intercollegiate Basketball Coaches Association. That's a high school induction. That is as high as you can get as far as high school induction. That was in 1987. And then Westmont College, that's where he went to school. He was an outstanding tennis player and basketball player at Westmont College. He was inducted into their Hall of Fame in 1995. And then in 2006, he was inducted into the California Community College Men's Basketball Coaches Association. And in 2017, he was inducted into the Pasadena Sports Hall of Fame. That's generally is for local coaches at recognition. So the basketball world really knew this man. And the lives that he touched just goes beyond, on and on and on. And he coached many athletes that furthered their academic and athletic careers. One in particular is a gentleman I talked about before, and that's Michael Cooper of the Showtime Laker fan. Michael played for Coach Turgeon at Pasadena High School, and he played for Coach Barnes, who I spoke about here at PCC. And he also coached our now women's basketball coach, Joe Perrone, played for Coach Turgeon in the 1982 team, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I think I got that right.
Can you please? Because we're out of time, just kind of.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because I could go on and on.
Yeah.
George was a man of faith, and he really coached with integrity and inspired many athletes, and he will surely be missed. There will be a celebration of George, of his life, at this Saturday at Lake Avenue Congregational Church at 11 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you.
Skip, thank you for coming and sharing some of our legacy of PCC. Thank you very much.
That's all.
Okay, we're moving on to agenda item number 6, which is approval of minutes, and this is for our last meeting, which was regular meeting number 6, which we held on December 11th. Do I hear a motion to approve?
I move approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Student trustee,
Aye.
fellow trustees, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously, minutes approved. Next is item number 7, and this is board committees reporting out. Do we have any board subcommittees reporting out? Okay, we'll move on to the next item. Now, the next item is our readjusted agenda. So, Dr. Endrogiannis, we're now going to go to
Okay, we
what
are
used to be item
I-1, which is refinancing 2002 election or Measure P general obligation bonds.
Okay.
2009 Series E, and I will defer to my colleague, Dr. Bush.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
The board, recall last meeting, we discussed the bond or the district indebtedness, and we discussed the bonds and how the Series E was our highest rate that we're paying, and that it's also eligible for refunding. And we've assembled a team to work on that refunding, and I'm here to introduce them. Actually, they'll introduce themselves, and then they'll walk through the refunding schedule so we can get this done. Okay.
Sure. Well, good evening. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. Just to go through some quick introductions here, and we have a slide deck to go through, which will provide information as we go. My name is Blake Beam. I'm one of the principals at KNN Public Finance. Our role here this evening and for purposes of the refunding transaction is as municipal advisor. Our primary focus is to serve as the district's fiduciary, protecting the interests of both the college itself, taxpayers, and also to oversee the financing process every step of the way, reviewing documents, securing the lowest cost of borrowing, and ensuring that ongoing reporting requirements are being met.
Hi, good evening. My name is Ann Lamarena-Rolin. I'm a partner at Norton Rose Fulbright. We are a law firm based down the road in downtown Los Angeles. I've had the privilege of serving as bond counsel and disclosure counsel to California community colleges and K-12 school districts for a little over 18 years. And our role in bond financings is to ensure that the structure complies with federal and state laws, as well as assisting districts with post-issuance compliance and drafting all the necessary legal documentation.
Hello, everyone. I'm Trennis Wright. I'm with Piper Sandler. We're an underwriter of bonds here in California. We're probably overall anywhere from first to third in the state for community colleges. And our role as underwriter is to do two things. Primarily, one is to market your bonds, so find the investors for them, and then underwrite any shortfall for any orders we don't get for them, so that 100% of your money is delivered.
So before we get started focusing on the refunding particularly, just to lay the landscape of the district's general obligation bonds outstanding, we move to the next slide here for a debt summary. All of the general obligation bonds do tie back to the 2002 election, Measure P, which issued 4 separate series of new money bonds which accessed the entire $150 million authorization. Those series of bonds were issued in 2003, 2006, and 2009. Of the 4 original issuances, 3 have been refinanced to lower the debt service payments for taxpayers and save a considerable amount of money in lowering that borrowing cost. The one series that has not since been refinanced is the 2009 Series E bonds, and we're going to spend a little bit of time walking through what a refinancing could look like for those bonds outstanding. The table at the bottom of this page lays out quite a bit of information, and you can see as you go through, there's each series name, when it was originally issued, and in what principal amount was issued. And then you move to the next column, and it actually lists the amount that's currently outstanding. And in the first several rows, there's actually $0 outstanding. Those are the series of bonds that have since been refinanced since their original issuance. And you can see where their true interest cost, which is the effective borrowing cost of those financings, you can see what those are in the third column to the right. And then compare that to particularly the 2 latest refinancings, a considerable reduction in the borrowing cost, and that's really where the taxpayer savings is generated. So again, that last column to the far right looks at the call date, which is not applicable for all of those bonds with no principal outstanding, and the closest of which are bonds callable from the 2009 Series E, which were effectively callable as of August 1, 2019. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Mr. Wright.
Mr. Wright is my father. I'm Trennis. Okay, so I got to put my glasses on. So page 2, so as Blake described, you've got 3 series of bonds outstanding. The ones we're talking about are Series E. You can undertake what's called, first of all, they're called Build America bonds. So in 09, 08, when the financial crisis hit, there was a lot of legislation passed, but one of those things was to give entities like yourselves the ability to issue bonds that were provided a subsidy. So the federal government pays 35% of the coupon on your rates, so that 6.67% is really like a net 430, and you'll understand why that's important in a second. So you're in a position now, as Blake mentioned, with the call date having come up last year, for the Series E bonds to be refinanced on a tax-exempt basis as opposed to a taxable basis. The reason that's important is because tax-exempt rates are typically lower than taxable rates. And then we're doing a current refunding, which all that really means in our world is that once you sell your bonds, you're going to be calling the old ones within 90 days. That's all that means. As we say on the bullet point, rates have come down quite a bit since November of 18. As everyone's probably aware, the Fed's been lowering rates since about that time. What they call the FOMC rate, or FOMC federal funds target rate, that's the one that's been adjusted, I think, 3 times now. So that's one of the things driving rates down. The other thing in tax-exempt market that's been happening is that for about a year, you've been having positive inflows into bond funds. So there's plenty of money around to buy bonds. So too much money for too little product, rates come down. Okay? So you have those 2 things in your favor. So right now, as Blake pointed out on the first slide, those rates on the other refinancings you did, which were basically 2% to 250, that's about where you'd be now, somewhere in that range, which will show on the next page. But basically, you can lower your rate, that 430 net rate on your Build America bonds, you can lower it by about 2%. So it's a pretty good time. The cash flow savings can be structured any way. That's our 4th bullet point there. What we mean by that is, and we'll show you a graph in a moment, is you can kind of pick how you want to get your savings. And cash flow savings are basically future tax savings. So you can have some say in how that happens. The traditional way, which is the first sub-bullet, is to do it, we call level or proportionate savings. And what we're proportionate to is basically we're saying your savings are a fixed percentage of your old debt service. That's really what we mean. Okay? And I'll show you an illustration of that on the next page. The second bullet says you can also do it another way. And there's several ways, but another way is to say, hey, we want to target a particular rate and structure our debt service based on that particular tax rate. When you guys passed these bonds, 02, right? The promised target tax rate was $23.20. The last time it was that high was about 10 years ago, at around $23, $22.50. It's now around $7, right? 1, because of the way the debt service is structured. 2, because in this area of the world, assessed values have gone up so much, right? That's an inverse relationship. Assessed values go up, tax rate drops.
So that's $7 per 100,000 on
Yes,
that?
sir.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
okay.
So the way we measure, that's a good point. So your statutory maximum in California for community colleges for GO bonds is $25 per 100,000. Exactly. In your case, you promised $23.20 back in 02. You're paying, or the taxpayers are paying per 100,000 assessed value about $7. Okay, that's the current year, current fiscal year, 1920. Okay, so in this area of the world, the average or the median assessed value on the tax roll is about $520,000 for a single-family home. So take 5.2 times your $7. That's what your average household is paying for the bonds. So around $35. Okay, to support 25 million, just not 25 million we have, but the total bonds you have, which is well over that. Okay, I think it's around 70 million, I think, total. So anyway, the preferred scenario, the last bullet says is, hey, what the preferred scenario on how to do the savings, you can do it a traditional way, which is fine, or another way, but that really becomes a question of policy for the district. But we can get into that another time. Any questions? I know these are typically monologues as opposed to dialogues, but any other questions before I move on?
I have one quick question. On the prior page, it referenced Prop 39.
Yes, sir.
And I thought this was Measure P, so can you just explain what Prop 39?
Yeah, so Measure P is the notation, I guess, for your particular bond measure.
Yeah.
Prop 39 refers to really Proposition 39, which applies to every community college district in the state. And it's the guidelines. If you want to describe it, you can.
Sure. So Proposition 39 was passed to allow voters to increase their taxes so long as 55% of them voted yes versus the usual 2/3 in order to increase taxes.
Understood. Thank you.
Any other questions? These are all good questions. These are particularly for, I think you just got the slides, so these are good questions. Okay, so this one, so we'll try to get through this quickly. So to put it in perspective, all these numbers, okay, you have your refinancing about $25.2 million in these Build America bonds, okay? To put that in perspective, your assessed value, right, or the base that generates the taxes to pay that number is $93 billion, right? So relative to that's pretty small. Your rate, that's 6.67, again, that's before the direct subsidy you get from the Treasury every 6 months, okay? So your net rate is about 4.30, okay? The interest rate right now, we have a range, and I can explain why we have a range, but basically your range now for refinancing this, again, as Blake described, on a TIC basis, or what's called true interest cost basis, is anywhere from about 2.08% to 2.3%. The reason for the range, one, remember it's a market, so it's moving on me every day, so it's moving on you every day. On top of that, how we structure the bonds will have an impact as well. There's not a lot of detail on that here, so I won't go into it, but you know, the coupons we put on it, where we put maturity amounts, all that will matter on what rate you get. But we thought a range was more appropriate to present at this time. If you proceed with the refinancing, we were happy to come back and give you the full detail on what actually happened. Final maturity in California, there's a couple rules you got to adhere to when you're refinancing general obligations bonds, one of which is final maturity, can't extend it, okay? I take out a mortgage that I've been paying on 15 years, I refinance it, I take it out to 30, okay? You can't do that with GO bonds. You have to either refinance it to its original maturity date, but you're welcome to do anything shorter, okay? That's one of the guidelines in California. Your savings, though, which is typically the big number, nominal savings. So this is, in essence, if you're looking at, hey, what are we saving in taxes and future tax assessments, anywhere from $5.7 million, based on those rates that we illustrate above, anywhere from $5.7 million to $6.9 million, okay? Present value, which is the next line down in green, is the present value of those two individual numbers, or corresponding numbers, is $4.6 million and $5.8 million. Why is that important? Because if someone says, hey, what are we saving? You can look at it the way my mother looks at it, which is 5.7 to 6.9, because she says, hey, I can't spend your present value, right? These are my nominal savings. Or you can look at it, someone like in finance and says, hey, what am I saving today? Doesn't matter what happens now for 10 years from now. What is that value today? So those are those values in the green. And then the real interesting thing from my perspective, because I'm in this line of work, is the bottom one, which is to say those present value savings, so the ones in green line, if you divide those by the par amount that you're refinancing, which is the $25.2 million at the top, is between 18.3% of that amount to 23.1% of that amount. The reason we state that is because in this line of work, there are several guidelines when you're doing refinancings, one of which is the Government Finance Officers Association guideline, is, hey, if you're going to do a refinancing, try and get 3%, okay? If you look at your numbers, one is 6 times that, one is over 7 times that, okay? In my line of work, we say do 5%. Okay, so typically someone like Blake probably wouldn't recommend a refinancing unless this number was at least 5%. As you can see, you're well over that, and have been for some time. And quite frankly, by the time now and the time we do it, there's another Fed meeting at the end of this month. We think you'll be in about the same spot. Okay. The graph on the bottom, I can go into it, but basically it's a graphical picture of where you're going to save the dollars. The y-axis is in millions, and the x-axis is time. And so this is showing you in a graphical depiction what you're paying now is the blue bars, and what you theoretically would be paying if you refinanced these bonds is the green bars. And this is just one scenario, and it's the lower end scenario, by the way. And so in dollars, right, between year 2021 and 2026, it's about $200,000 a year. And then for the balance, it's about $700,000 a year. So it's quite a bit of money. With that, I'll turn it, unless there's any more questions.
I have one question.
And John has a question too.
Oh, I'm sorry. John,
No,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. You're,
John, go ahead.
I'm
You're
just
up,
trying
sir.
to, I get the concept quickly, and then the detail gets murky really quick, and you're just a little muffled at the mic. So,
I'm sorry.
just for curiosity, your present value, what's the underlining discount rate that you use when you do that? And if you don't know offhand, it's okay.
No, it's a good question. So the discount, so if you're discounting those cash flows, so the annual cash flows that constitute the or aggregate to the 5.7 million on the low end,
Right.
you're basically discounting those at the higher, at the 2.3% you see,
That's, okay, and then the other one would be
the inverse. So you're discounting the.
at the 2.008?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then, so I remember, because I happened to be on the board when we were selling the initial bonds. And I can remember the CFO at the time and the day that it was going to price. And it was, so I'm just interested in who, and just briefly, who and how is the actual price set on that day? Is there somebody in your office that sits there and is watching all these rates and basically pops in a certain number at a certain time and it goes out at that? I mean, is that what it comes? How does that actually work? Who's
Yes.
pulling the trigger?
So there's a process, a pricing process, if you will. So we're in the market every week, right? Like we said, we probably do in a year $1.5 billion. Okay, so we're in the market just about every week with a deal that, in a lot of cases, is similar to the one we're talking about tonight. Okay, so but I am one person from Piper Sandler. We have 150 salespeople. That's all they do. We have 8 underwriters in the state that's all they do is price money. Sales guys sell it, and we have one guy who's dedicated just to California. So that guy really makes the pricing decision. The process itself is really kind of a week-long process, if you will. I know it sounds like short time to figure out how to sell $25 million in bonds, but once we get the preliminary official statement, what's called posted or made available to the public, we then are cut loose on the market to say, hey, who has cash to invest, right? And we know that from the other offerings that we sell, right? Someone puts an order, we don't fill it, we say, hey, we don't have this one, we get this one coming next week, okay? But I got 150 people saying that. So we find those investors, and then the day before you go to sell, we have what's called a pre-pricing. So we take our offerings that we priced, and along with Blake, we take every offering that's been priced that's comparable to yours, and it's a benchmarking process. Okay, to say, hey, how are we structuring this offering versus another one? Credit rating-wise, are they the same? Those kinds of things. Okay, we benchmark it, and then we get Blake on the phone because he's your fiduciary, and he sees more deals than I do, right? Because he talks to not just one underwriter, he talks to all of them, right? Because they're doing deals for several districts. Then we get the county on the phone, county treasurer office, who sees every deal in LA County. Okay, and we go through basically a discussion. We put forward basically the preliminary proposal and say, hey, this is how we think you should do it. Then we get input from Blake. We get input from the county treasurer. Then the next day, which is called pricing day, when we get authority on that, we call it pre-pricing day. We get authority from staff basically to go ahead and execute. Then on sale date, we go in, we price the money for real. We get orders on those pre-pricing levels. And then we come to the districts and say, it's usually around 10 a.m. on pricing day and say, hey, this is what we think your offering looks like. And we adjust them based on a discussion we have with Blake. Hey, move this, a couple rates in favor of the district, leave that one alone, those kinds of things. And then once you give us
So
the...
I think I get it.
Okay.
And I think
All right.
ultimately, if I give the short version, but I appreciate the way you did it
Sure.
because then I see who all's involved.
Sure.
You're going to make a recommendation through our fiduciary to probably our CFO.
Yep.
Who will agree. And he will have the confidence of knowing that not only is this your recommendation, but our independent fiduciary has agreed with this. And I say price, but I realize there's prices
Sure.
because there's different levels and times and stuff.
Right.
And also, he has the confidence of knowing that the county treasury was involved.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Good question.
Trustee Hilsman.
So a couple of questions. I tend to be a skeptic of financial markets.
Sure. Me too.
Yeah, it's good, right? So I know that you want to be aggressive as far as the timeline, and you've laid it out here.
What's the next page?
How realistic is that? How important is it that it be aggressive, and how realistic is the timeline that you've laid out? I know you feel it's realistic, but
Okay.
what kind of bumps should we expect?
The timeline that's laid out here, I would consider it quite realistic. It takes into consideration a process to ensure that from a policy standpoint, the board is able to make informed decisions about this whole thing. But at the same time, it aligns itself with a true financing transaction of how to actually get it done, priced and closed. The realism in the whole thing really entails getting board action and direction,
Right.
where, I think the big ticket item on this timeline, and we didn't go through it, but just the main pieces really are to come back to the board next month on the 19th for actual approval of the authorizing resolution and corresponding finance and legal documents. From there, it gives the financing team and staff the go-ahead to post a preliminary official statement, start the pre-marketing process, which Trennis has described, and actually lead into setting interest rates on these bonds through a pricing. And then usually about 2 weeks thereafter, we close. So the timeline is realistic, and time frame is somewhat of the essence, given the fact that these bonds were callable August 1, 2019, and their savings to be realized. Each day, week, month, and so on, that goes on, there's actually an opportunity lost of savings to be realized. Now, obviously, a day or a week is not monumental.
Right.
It's the bigger time frame that goes on.
So you don't need anything from us except for our budget committee review until February 19th. And you'll come in and say up or down, ask us for authority, right?
It's a green light, red light on the 19th in terms of the refinancing itself. I think, and maybe Dr. Bush wants to speak to this, what the plan is for the discussion beforehand.
We will not need anything from the board until the 19th. There's a considerable amount of work that staff's going to be doing with the team. And then we're going to present all the legal documents to the Budget and Audit Committee on the 13th. And bond counsel will walk the committee through all the documents at that time.
And then I had a final question, which is probably outside of your particular bailiwicks, but how do we? I'm a tax. I'm the taxpayer, and I'd like to know that we're saving, the college is saving you money. How do you communicate that to a community, other than, I open my tax bill once a year and maybe if I'm really paying attention, there's a discrepancy. But typically, when you have a bond refinancing like this, how do you get the word out to the community so it will benefit the college because we're saving them money?
Well, that's where Mr. Bucklehide comes in. Santa Clarita does an excellent job of that.
Okay, so
of reaching out to the community and sharing what the board has done to save the taxpayers' money. Right. And I'm sure he will do an excellent job also.
I was thinking like $50 bills, and we could just stand out in front.
No,
we can't do that.
Legal counsel will get upset with me.
But I can talk to it. So Santa Clarita, I do the bonds for Santa Clarita, and Dr. Bush is right. They are, how do I say this? Extremely involved in the process as an organization. We present to the public in the board meetings how things went, and we also present to the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee how things went. I mean, they really make a huge effort to PR the death out of whatever they do with the bonds, whether it's not even refinancings where there's no savings, where they're issuing new money to do new projects. I mean, they really go out of their way to communicate that. So yeah.
Any other questions? I have two. The first one is, do we know what the rating will be for this refunding?
We don't it's kind of a partial question, or a two-part question, I should say. the district recently went through a rating surveillance where, in the absence of an actual transaction, the rating agencies will proactively look at what's currently going on, with the district finances, management, tax base, and so on. And so recently, the district was successful in having Standard & Poor's, one of the three major rating agencies, affirm the district's rating of AA+, which is an extremely favorable and strong outcome, given the fact that the only higher rating is the coveted AAA, and that really is reserved for community-funded colleges. There is no non-community funded colleges currently that secure the AAA rating other than San Diego Community College District, and they have a trombone clause and some other elements that allow them to get there.
Thank you. And my second question, if you know, I'm looking back on your information.
Can I make one more comment before?
Yeah, please do, sir.
So just to put it all in perspective, Blake talked to the AAA elements, but there's also, you have what's called a split rating. So S&P has you AA+, Moody's has you kind of one notch lower, but we're going to work on that during this process. But to put it in perspective, Long Beach Community College, which is a good sized district, single campus, well, they have Pacific Coast campus, but basically we consider them a single campus district. They are not a AA+. They are a AA and a AA2. I do the bonds for Long Beach. And so, there's other ones in the district. There's Santa Clarita. I do that one. They're AA S&P, so they're a notch below on S&P's rating than you guys. So to get that AA+, particularly just through surveillance review, speaks very well for the district. Because if you go forward this process, we are going to, what's the nice word, blitz Moody's with the pressure with a lot of material that Dr. Ingedonis and Dr. Bush are going to present. Go up there and say, hey, instead of go up to San Francisco and say, hey, this is the reason that this district deserves an upgrade. And because S&P just gave you an upgrade, I think you're in good shape to get the same.
Thank you. And my second question was a couple of slides prior. We listed out the prior refundings that we had done. And the most recent one was in 2016. It was just under $34 million. And if you know, what were the nominal savings that resulted from that refunding? I know that we're focused on the current, but...
Yeah, I'm afraid we weren't the underwriter at that stage, and I don't think Blake was the financial advisor at that stage, so we don't know. However, we can either get it to you subsequent to this meeting or at the next meeting. If you want, we can find out.
Subsequent to this meeting would be fine.
Is a ballpark someplace in my mind, the number 7 million comes out?
I remember 7 million, yeah.
Okay.
So this would be similar.
Yeah. We can, from public information, because this market is so transparent, we can recreate what happened and tell you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Trustee Chen Lao.
This is tagging along with Trustee Helsman's question, is as a community member, and we're going to certainly have to answer our constituents, the question that I think that's going to come up is why now? And then how does this impact us?
Right,
I mean, the taxpayer. So that may be, again, outside, in his words, your billywhack. But if I'd like to hear from Dr. Bush or, those of you on there.
I'd be happy to. These bonds are eligible now since August for refunding. So because the eligibility is now, that's why now. And it's an opportunity for us to save the taxpayers money.
And that would be Alex's job to communicate that to the constituents.
He's better at communicating than me.
And can I also add that that was one of the reasons that we needed to do all those financial policies in the fall, is that since the bonds were refunded back in 2016, the rules changed. Right. And so certain board policies had to be in place in order to do that. So theoretically, if we had had those board policies in place, let's say in September, we could have done this in September. But when Dr. Bush came, he took a look at all of our policies and realized that the world outside the college had changed, but we hadn't necessarily done the internal piece yet. So that's why the timing is now.
Thank you.
And not that we controlled it, but fortunately, in the intervening time, the interest rates went down. So, and Trustee Martin, you had a
Well,
question.
and I was just going to say, in answer to your question, nobody knows where interest rates are going to go in the future. We know they're low now. I subscribe to a couple of the economic services of several institutions. You guys know better than I do, but I would guess that there's more of a prediction of them sliding higher going through into 2020 than sliding lower, are the things that I'm hearing. You guys probably are more in tune to that, so.
Yeah, you got to look at why they've come down, I guess, to understand why they might go up. So, right, the Fed had been hiking rates for a long time, up until December of 18. Then they reversed position, right? Because there was all this talk about, hey, maybe we're heading into a recession, just because the expansion had gone on for so long, right? So now you're hitting the 8th, 9th, 10th year, however you want to measure it, and say, hey, is this economy going to slow down? But the stock market says no, right? And so typically when the stock market is doing well, I think it had its best day ever today, then rates start going back up. And I think that's what you're referring to.
I'm referring to that, and there seems to be a little more positive news out, a little bit more signs of some potential inflation actually may happen at some point sooner. All the things that are good for the stock market and bad for interest rates, which mean the tendency is that there's a higher probability they're going to go up than go down.
That's a very good way to put it. They're inversely related, right?
And so,
stock market goes up, bond market's going to fall. That's a very good way to say it.
And when they're low and you take advantage of it and they go lower, you just say, so what? I took advantage of them when they're low. And when they're low and you didn't take advantage of it and you go higher, and they go higher, then you go home very upset.
You just described my home refinance history. So yeah.
That's the way I view those things. So, the sooner the better. I see we got February 13th for that budget and audit. We got a little housekeeping we got to do on that date because that's not going to work for all our members. I don't know if you guys are going to be available sooner than that, but we're still working on some housekeeping there.
That's primarily for bond counsel to walk through the legal documents. The underwriter and the advisor won't be there. So the board understands.
Would council be available a week or so sooner if it works out for us?
Yes, we
get
can look
back.
at calendar coordination.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Brown.
Just a quick question. I'm looking at page 4, and I'm seeing that refunding the bond of $25,295,000, whatever. Now, the current interest rate, is that what you have for 6.67 is what we are paying now, right? Just
Correct.
Okay.
That's the gross rate, but with the direct subsidy from the federal government, it actually is reduced to roughly 4.3.
So basically, what I'm trying to find out is, you mentioned the ratings of different colleges, and I know we're AA. So just a scenario, for a perfectly well scored community college, what is the going rate?
Perfectly scored, you mean if this was a AAA district?
Yes, that's my question.
How much better would it be?
Yes.
Right, okay, so if I had a ballpark for a AAA district of this size versus a AA plus / I'll call it AA1 because I think you're going to get there with Moody's, so you'd only be one notch below the AAA. I would say your rate's probably going to be maybe 10 basis points better. I mean, not a lot. There's not a lot. It's not a chasm, right? The chasm occurs between A plus to the AA category. You're already AA, going to the AAA category, that's not such a chasm. It's a small jump.
Okay.
And Trustee Brown, 10 basis points is 0.1%
Oh,
interest.
sorry.
So
Yes.
it's
Thank you,
a
Dr.
small
Armstrong, or
difference.
Mr. Armstrong.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that answers all of our questions. Thank you for the presentation. This is complicated stuff, and if I could try to oversimplify it, if we think about those of us that own homes, and we took out a mortgage and rates drop, and we refi our mortgage to take advantage of the lower rates and get a lower payment, and that's what we're doing here, And in this case, we're doing it on behalf of all of the property owners throughout the district who pay these bonds off through their property taxes. So thank you again.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we are now going to move on to what used to be item I2, which is the Facilities Master Plan update.
Ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Tonight, we have HGA, who's going to give an update on the master plan. This is not our finished master plan, but they're going to speak to the work that has taken place and where we are in the process.
Okay, thanks, Mike. So thank you for having us here. I would like to introduce myself. My name's Kevin Donahue. I'm here with my colleagues, Joe Sion, Ina Murphy, and Louis Kaufman.
Can you repeat those names, because you went away from the mic.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Kevin Donahue, and my colleagues, Joe Sion, Ina Murphy, and Louis Kaufman. And we're here to provide an overview, a status update on the facilities master plan that we are currently developing. We were brought on board earlier last year in the fall of 2019, but there's a little backstory here. We were actually hired originally in 2015 to develop a facilities master plan, and worked with the college at that time for about a year and a half, at which point the whole effort went on hold for multiple reasons indefinitely, and then we were brought back in 2019 to complete it through a much different lens with a different, and we'll get into that, but essentially to serve the upcoming bond with a 10-year program. So tonight we are going to provide an update on a few items. So with this agenda, we're going to go over the scope that we're focusing on with this facilities master plan, essentially the different efforts that we're going through and the tools of engagement that we've been utilizing in order to garner the right feedback to develop the plan. The deliverable, essentially the final document that we will be providing the college that will have our recommendations, the process we've been going through, and then the actual physical master plan recommendations that we'll be going over in their current iteration. We actually met with the executive committee yesterday and presented options that we are in the process of refining, and you'll see that at the end of our presentation. Scope. So largely, we had a few areas of focus for this effort. One was obviously to make updates to current enrollment projections. A lot happened between 2015 and 2019 in terms of the projections that we were working with and that really are informing the recommendations for physical build-out in a 10-year timeframe. And then also the development of the career communities framework. That's a huge part of the effort that we're going through to organize everything through that system, through that breakdown of the academic programs with PCC. The effort that we're going through is spanning from October 2019 roughly through February, at which point we will be providing the final deliverable. And that time frame was largely dictated by the time frame needed to prepare everything for a 2020 bond measure. The idea that this master plan will largely serve as a blueprint for that bond. So for the deliverable itself, this is a very simplified breakdown of what's being included and kind of the things we're focusing on. The guiding principles, essentially everything that we identified as the primary priorities for what this master plan really is hoping to achieve, and some of the things that it's focusing on rectifying with regard to the current state of the campus. Current state of the campus, so really a snapshot of everything that is currently in place, and just physical observations, and then recommended future state. So that includes not only a list of recommended projects that align with academic enrollment projections and aspirations, but also a sequencing, kind of a roadmap of which projects should happen when, and the shell game that really is associated with that in order to make sure that these projects, these capital projects that would happen over a 10-year period, minimize disruption to the campus and make sure that they're being carried out in the most logical sequence.
Okay, so now I'm going to review a little bit about the process that we have gone through to this point. So we started with developing guiding principles, and that was through visioning sessions that we conducted with various groups on the campus. We had an initial town hall meeting. We have been meeting regularly with the executive cabinet. We've been meeting with focus groups on various scopes on the campus, and we met academic senate, and we also met with the student government group to gain insight. And really we were asking questions about what do we keep, what to discard, getting opinions about how they feel about the campus overall. We also reviewed the current state of the campus, and that includes not only enrollment program, as Kevin mentioned, the career communities as they are situated now, but we also went into more physical assessment of facilities, looking at open space, parking and transportation. We also looked at the wayfinding and signage on campus, and we evaluated the sustainability aspects that the college is currently following. So we then started looking at the future state. Where are we going? Where does the college want to go? And that includes the growth projections, the evolution of programs on the campus, what is growing, what is declining, and then also looking at the requirements of facilities, specifically the facilities on campus. And that helped us to start establishing a planning framework for organizing and looking at the physical reality of the campus. And that primarily revolved around looking at outdoor rooms, pathways through the campus, and boundaries as a kind of an organizing framework. We then started developing strategies for facilities to be demolished, upgrading of facilities, open spaces, the boundaries and confines of the campus, parking, as we mentioned before, the career communities, and also a phasing plan for implementation.
So getting into a little more detail, we mentioned enrollment growth. We were working with the campus to help understand what their goals and their targets were for enrollment growth for all of the divisions at PCC. The target enrollment was determined to be 24,000 FTES, and that is in alignment with what the Chancellor's Office is looking at for growth at PCC. And really the largest growth of programs would be in the math, natural science, and social sciences, with by far the greatest growth in the non-credit division. And that really has an effect on not only the Colorado campus, but the satellite campuses as well. With the enrollment projections, as well as looking at existing programs and working with the administration, we were able to then utilize that information with space projections and analysis of space usage on campus, and determined what the programmatic growth needs would be for each of the different divisions. It makes sense that divisions with more specialized spaces, such as natural sciences, require the most additional space. And the other large area of space growth revolves around student spaces, student support space, student lounge space that's really lacking on the campus right now.
Can we pause there a second?
Yes, sir.
Trustee Martin, go ahead.
I'm waiting for there you go. So I'm just trying to understand the slide.
Sure.
And it's graphic, so I appreciate that because that makes it easier for us. So the smaller, usually smaller, dotted squares are the ASF, additional square footage?
That's correct, yes.
And these are cubes, so is that just to make it more visual? Is it, it's kind of a proportional picture?
It is, sir. The solid cubes represent the existing space that is allotted to each of these divisions. And then the speckled cubes represent what we've projected as additional space needs. You'll notice, for example, although mathematics is a program that is expected to grow more than others, you could see their space growth is actually doubling. But mathematics is also a program that doesn't utilize specialty spaces such as labs. They tend to utilize classrooms. So their chunk is not as large as, for example, visual arts or natural sciences.
So to replay these last two slides or to succinct them, the first criteria was 24,000 FTES.
Yes, sir.
And then there was some work that you did with the campus as to which disciplines and subjects would facilitate that growth, where not credit seems to be a big one. And then when we translate that into actual square footage, this is the proportional picture.
That's correct. That's also in combination with some space projection models that we utilize, such as one that the Center for Educational Facilities Planning has produced, in addition to an analysis of utilization of specialized spaces, such as classrooms and class labs.
Okay, I appreciate that. And just as a reminder, the 24,000 FTES, which is, I think, 10 years out or something, equates to what kind of percent growth rate from where we are now?
About 0.75% a year.
0.75 per year. Okay, thank you.
Or 7.5% over 10 years. Okay.
I have a question.
Trustee Chen Lau.
I have a question on the library. If you go back to your previous slide, you see that the library is probably the least amount of growth, or I don't know if that's how you're looking at it, but can you explain why then it would need almost the most amount of space?
So what we're looking at here is enrollment growth. So that would be students that are taking or specializing in spaces that are programs that are library-related programs. So those
like
students
library studies or
yes,
something? Okay.
Exactly. And so then if you look at the space growth, most of your library space on campus right now, which is the solid orange square, is the existing library. But the large amount of space is also intended to be for student study space, group study, individual study, the centers that will support the career communities, their growth will require a big investment in additional space. So the enrollment is a little separate from the physical space. The physical space is something that every student on campus would utilize.
Thank you.
Trustee Martin.
Is this, oh, it says right up the top, this is Colorado. So this is just for this campus?
Yes, and later in our
You'll get to the
presentation,
end.
we'll cover the
Okay.
satellites.
All right, let's proceed. Thank you.
Thank you. So from all of that work, we then have begun to develop a list of major renovations and new construction. And this table just looks at physical space. In addition, we'll discuss later things like green space on campus. But really, and this is not in order of priority, we have determined that there's a recommendation to really complete some major renovation of the R and the C buildings, build a new STEM and health science building to help bridge that gap in space need right now. And that would be in addition to the new science building that's been approved. A new L building, which would be student services and would also help to accommodate some of that need for additional center space. And finally, a new academic building. In addition, selective renovation of outdated classrooms and labs will be an important part of updating the campus. Consolidating departmental offices to create some much-needed adjunct support space. Looking at athletics from the standpoint of removing the tennis courts and possibly relocating the pool, and we'll discuss that later. And then just general renovation of non-teaching spaces. Finally, looking at some of your beloved and historical buildings like the planetarium, and then also what are some opportunities for maybe rethinking and reusing the boiler house as well. And then as we mentioned before, the outreach. So we've been talking a lot about the quantitative aspect of this effort, but really the qualitative aspect involves good listening to all the parties involved.
Thank you, Ina. So to pick up where Ina, talking about developing guiding principles, so that slide just prior to this was just an example of the type of data that we're collecting through a lot of conversations, and then from that developing some primary thoughts about principles that are more general and less specific, such as the ones you see on the screen. By no means is this list intended to be the comprehensive list, but it is to characterize the types of influences that we were hearing and sort of desires from the communities on the campus. So using all of this, and I won't go through all of them, we go back this way, then really began to look at the physical character of the campus and how to make recommendations for its development. So we talked about developing a planning framework, and that was more of an idea about campus planning and less about specific facilities that would help guide us in terms of locating facilities and enhancing certain attributes that might tie back into those great guiding principles. So for this campus, we started with what we think is the sort of heritage space of the campus, which is the reflecting pool facing Colorado Boulevard. And we spent time working on developing what the architectural character and sort of campus character of that space would be, and the conditions that are inherent in it, and then how that space might sponsor the development of other spaces and influence the character of other spaces on the campus as a sort of series of guiding principles. And then from that, you can see here's our existing campus. And what we've done is we've diagrammed spaces that are current, what we characterize as rooms, like that room that is the reflecting pool, which is a formal room facing Colorado Boulevard. And then you can see the sculpture garden, the main plaza, which is directly outside our window right here, and then the court, the garden area that's between Lancers Pass and leading into the stadium. And those areas are being formed principally by buildings into rectilinear spaces that could be enhanced through development of new outdoor amenities, programmatic elements, as well as architecture to begin to approximate maybe the character of the space on Colorado Boulevard as an influential space. So we use that as a guiding idea, and then began to identify as we suggested, some recommendations for demolition. So we're going to go through a lot of material really quickly about, and I'm sure you'll have questions, but quickly, I'm sorry, one more aspect to this. We also talked about rooms and then pathways that lead to those destinations, both the facilities as well as the outdoor rooms. So you can see this diagram showing access points currently existing on the campus and primary pedestrian thoroughfares that connect those pathways from the perimeter, the boundary of the campus, into the center of the campus. And one thing that's became very evident in our conversations with the campus focus groups is that wayfinding and the ability to navigate the campus in a very direct fashion was a priority. So establishing this framework and clarifying the framework of how one moves on a path to a destination was a priority.
Trustee Chen Lao.
So, what I really appreciate this. Certainly, this is really thoughtful. Having come from USC School of Architecture, I can tell that you really put a lot of great work into this. My question is, this has not gone out to the public, right? The discussion groups and all the focus groups have mainly been within the college.
I'll respond to that. That's why you're having a study session today, because the next part of this process is for HGA to complete a working draft so that we can take it out to the community. But it didn't seem, and Trustee Waugh raised this in the Facilities Committee, that it was important for the board to have an idea of what the community was going to be looking at.
Absolutely.
Thank you. No more questions. Let's proceed.
This slide illustrates the principal sites that we've identified through our work for development, demolition, and repurposing. So you can see on Colorado Boulevard at both corners across the frontage, especially on the northwest corner, we're looking that as a site for development. And I'll explain what we mean by development. It's not specifically about buildings, but it's also about the quality of open space and things like that. There's a series of buildings that we're electing, or we've been focused on in terms of removing. So you can see those sites on this as well as parking areas and repositioning. So the tennis courts, which are currently on the west side, you can see that's an area for demolition. I probably have a pointer here. And then also the Science Village, which is on the southeast corner as well. So these are the sites that we presented as having potential for development, and then we began to talk about strategies for the development. So first, primarily, we looked at a series of new buildings, and these buildings collect our most essential recommendations. A new STEM building on the west side of the campus, adjacent to the new Seraphine building, a new student services building facing Colorado Boulevard, just north of our position today, a new large academic building where the W building is today and where Lancers Pass and the swimming pool is, and then the swimming pool relocating to the southeast corner. You can see it in the distant corner there, with a small facility building that would include locker rooms and things like that. So those are the principal new buildings that we're exploring right now with the campus. And then in addition to that, we're proposing that the two main workhorse buildings in the center of the campus be fully renovated. And you can see those marked in blue. And then we're also looking now at enhancements for open space. And this is a really critical part of our conversation with the executive team and the rest of the community. So you can see, very importantly, that we're addressing Colorado as a frontage that now extends a green space from corner to corner for your campus and removes a portion of parking at those two corners, so that the approach from both directions on your principal identity side is of a garden space. And that's one of the reasons why we also looked at replacing the existing building for student services, the L building, back into a smaller building that pulls back and holds the line of the historic architecture that faces Colorado Boulevard. You can see that there. So that green space is continuous across the front. In addition to that, the two opposite corners of the campus on the south, we're recommending that you add green space there as a buffer against the neighborhoods. So we're removing a little bit of parking there, and of course, at the southeast corner, you can see where the pool is. That's currently the Science Village, no parking there, but on the opposite corner, a slight amount of parking there. So we're presenting a boundary idea about identifying at all four corners of the campus the idea of green space. The character of that green space, is it a garden, is it a lawn, et cetera? We haven't gotten into that level of detail, but it's the idea of it being open and being landscaped. In addition to that, you can see at the center of the campus, two principal green spaces now being proposed adjacent to the new academic building, and then where the current V building is, that was a demolition site just north of the arts building, as a new green space as well. And then finally, a repositioning of the plaza space or the open space that's currently next to Lancer Spass that leads into the stadium. You can see that as a pink block. That's not intended to be fully hardscape, but probably a different kind of space than a more green space as the other ones. And then a renovation of this plaza that's directly outside our building right here, and you can see that in pink there as well. So different types of outdoor spaces with different programmatic uses that would be available to students as well as others for a variety of different kinds of activities. That was one of the priorities that was presented to us. So this shows us our strategy for open space, and then finally a strategy for parking expansion. So the tennis courts would become a new surface parking lot, and then we were proposing an extension of Lot 4, the structured parking, on the southwest corner. And those are the two areas that we're looking at adding parking. So we can provide data in terms of what is our net gain, net loss, et cetera, but generally there's an expansion of parking on the campus with this strategy. I think you can see that there are a number of what we call empty chairs still remaining in this plan, and that's intentional, so that the idea of a 10-year plan still accommodates expansion in the future and future development as the communities, as the campus needs. And then finally, I want to draw us back to the diagramming tools. We talked about rooms, and you can see now we've included the new rooms that we are creating with these new facilities, the one that's directly north of the academic building, the one that is the court that leads into the stadium, very large-scale new principal outdoor spaces similar to the scale of the space that's on Colorado Boulevard, as well as in front of this building right here. And then in an aerial view, this is our strategy for beginning to define how the career communities lay into that plan. So it's, as you can see, and I'll use this word, it's a very fluid diagram, and that's intentional. The idea that a community exists only in 1, 2 buildings and that's it was something that we wanted to avoid. We wanted to encourage that communities had a sort of a general precinct, but that they shared spaces. So at the center of the campus, there are 3 proposed main workhorse buildings of shared facilities. You can see them in the middle, the building that's the original administration building, Building R, and our new academic building. Those are principally about buildings that are the most shared classrooms and laboratory spaces. And then the remaining buildings have building spaces that are more dedicated to the different communities. And you can see at the south, the arts and communication and design community, which is in the arts complex, and then moving around the clockwise, business and industry on the west side, capturing potentially part of Building R, might have some dedicated space in that for its own use, but the rest of that would be shared. The blue buildings are shared services buildings, the building that we're in today, the proposed building on Colorado Boulevard and the library, the student store. And then finally up on Colorado Boulevard, liberal arts, and then, sorry, I have to look at my glasses here, social and behavioral sciences. And then finally, the STEM and the health sciences and wellness communities as it wraps around. So this is a diagram that is fluid and dynamic, intentionally so, but it's beginning to capture that overall agenda of really organizing the campus around these communities, and we think that the new facilities and the open spaces begin to address that. And finally, the last slide is a draft of the phasing that we begin to see surfacing in order of priority. And so I'll walk you through that really quickly. We think that the first priority is to continue down the path of STEM and science. So number 1 is the idea of adding another STEM building right there on the west side of the campus, east side of the campus. In addition to that, there's a small circle that we're proposing, which would be a small, more comprehensive dining facility in the circular plaza of the Sculpture Garden. We think that there needs to be a more substantive dining opportunity on that side of the campus than the coffee cart that's currently up against the library. So that's an idea for that in phase 1. Phase 2 would be the swimming pool relocating to the southeast corner of the campus, as well as the addition, construction potentially of all the open spaces at the 4 corners of the campus. Phase 3 would be the construction of the main classroom academic building that is in this, where the swimming pool in Building W is right now, as well as all of the open spaces and rooms that are in the center of the campus, where the Building V has been removed north of Arts, and that plaza, and there's 2 main green spaces. And then phase 4 would be the renovation of Building R, 5, renovation of the main admin building, and 6, finally, the parking expansions themselves. It's intended to be a really abbreviated idea. There's actually a lot more thought into how that sequencing might occur in terms of moving populations around on the campus, and it is quite complex. You have to be able to have a place to put populations, so that's part of what's driving the sequencing of these buildings. But it is a work in progress, so it has not been fully vetted and fully established. And it's also not intended to be like we're going to stamp it and say that's the only way you can work. There's going to be a number of factors when you finally begin doing this work that might suggest a different sequencing of events. And I think we can move on to the exterior satellites.
Sure. So we mentioned satellites before. We wanted to, in this presentation, just focus on the 3 primary satellites. The first one being the Foothill campus, which is comprised of the main large building and currently some portables. And that represents approximately 80,000 gross square feet of space. And what we're recommending is an additional building where the portables currently are, removing them, and building an additional 24,000 gross square feet of space that would accommodate the growth in non-credit, but then also allow for backfill of the existing building where there are currently some health science programs that are coming onto the campus when the new science building is constructed. And it would allow for some new programs. I think phlebotomy was one of the new programs that was discussed. And then Rosemead, the existing facility is approximately 24,000 square feet, but we determined that Rosemead area is an area where there will be significant growth in non-credit. So if the campus were to continue with this site, which we understand is a lease site, and so there needs to be some more discussion about that, but if they were to grow on that site, there is an opportunity to build an additional 20,000 square foot building, or if it's 2 stories, a 40,000 square foot building that can allow for significant growth in that part of the district. And then finally, the Northwest School, which is on the Muir campus. It's an existing facility. It's also a lease facility. So we have looked more internally at that site and what are the current uses that are in the building, what are the opportunities for creation of new spaces, and are making some recommendations for continuing the growth of culinary arts, but then also creating some spaces for a couple new programs, including laser science and robotics, while continuing to grow the number of classrooms that are in that facility to allow for additional teaching opportunities, and creating student spaces that do not exist right now in that building. And that would be opportunities for tutoring, for student study, for student lounge, and some growth of administrative space. All right.
Okay, Trustee Brown.
Well, thank you so much for the presentation. I'm actually a little disappointed only because I am not an architect, and like trying to follow those pictures, I would have loved to be able to really sit down and see them and look at them before this today, because this is the day when we are supposedly trying to provide thoughtful input. I don't have any, because I could hardly follow what was going down. I kept asking, do we have some, hard copies? And I'm here looking at the ones we have, and it's nowhere to be found. So yeah, I'm actually disappointed because I really wanted to be able to have some real good questions, and I don't have any.
Trustee Brown, to that point, understood and agreed. Perhaps we can figure out a way to process this and get our comments back and stay on a tight schedule. But your comment is well taken.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other comments?
What is the schedule?
So currently, we're on track to finalize this document by the end of February. And there will be multiple rounds of draft reviews, the first of which we're actually coming up on next week. So there is certainly time for feedback and refinement of the recommendations. Certainly, as Louis mentioned, what we're presenting tonight is a progress update. It's kind of where we are, but it's starting to take shape.
Trustee Martin. Oh, I'm sorry. Trustee Chenlau, go ahead and finish up.
I certainly understand Trustee Brown's point. At the same time, I was really excited to see this because it is the first time that I've seen it. And to see this planned out, maybe because I did come from the School of Architecture, to see this being thoughtfully done and being able to articulate some of the suggestions from our stakeholders, I feel like that's really important. And I'm really excited to see what the next iteration of this would be.
Thank you.
To that point, one of the things we've considered since the beginning is making sure that we develop the right tools, because we understand, those of us in the architecture profession can see this and make sense of it, but for some who haven't gone through this process, it just looks like blocks that are hard to translate to exactly what they mean. And because we're working on such a high level, we don't want to show too much detail about each building. It's just not, it's too far in advance of that to really try to fill in those blanks. But at the same time, we want to try and give a sense of the look and feel that we're recommending with these upgrades. So that's something we want to hear more about, is from the layman's terms, so to speak. How do we present this information in a way that the public can really understand and process and get on board with the idea of a bond measure?
Trustee Martin and then Trustee Sarkisian.
Okay, well, first, I want to say thank you for, as I saw it and you said it, there just are a lot of things that made a lot of sense. And it kind of clicked for me that I can see the thought processes that are working, and I appreciate those thought processes that you're using, the extra green space, the positioning and everything you said. It was, I think, a very solid presentation. Let me just get one little pet peeve out of the way. So on the moving the pool and the locker room, I'm not sure why the pool is on the left side and the locker room's on the street side, so everybody has to walk by the pool to get to the locker room, to get into proper swim attire, to come back into the pool. Just seems like you ought to switch the pool and the pool locker room, so you come to the locker room first and then you go to the pool if you want to, and if you're not going to the pool, you can still go to the locker room and use it to go out on the football field or something. That's just a micro, small comment. Maybe there's a reason you don't put a pool up against the street. I don't know. But anyway, little things like that just hit me. The big question here is, I think we need to look at the big question. So I was thinking about this today, and let's say the family's growing in home, not my problem today, but was, and so we're looking to, like, maybe we need to either add an addition or we need to relocate, and we're kind of saying, like, we need to add a bedroom, and there's some stuff we need to add for the family because we're growing. And what's the very next step you do as the family? You start to kind of price shop various components against various prices so that we know we're shopping, is this possible? So I think it behooves us, especially at the board level, to, before you go any more into the detail, stop and look at a summary cheat sheet of the big picture. First time around the circle, what is the extra room really going to cost us if we go out and sell the 3-bedroom and buy a 4-bedroom with or without a pool, as opposed to if we want to add an addition kind of idea. So I appreciated the graphic interpretation that kind of visually gave us these are the additions, but it seems like it would be nice to have this is the existing square footage, this is the new square footage that's proposed, number of parking spots, new number of parking spots. I know the state subdivides square footage into various categories. I don't know what they are. There's classrooms, there's labs, there's blip, 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 blip. Maybe a subdivision of this is where we are now, this is where we might be at the end of this 10-year project, and how that would be impacted by state guidelines, because I know there's ratios and guidelines of proportions that you have to keep in classroom space. Obviously, you've done a little bit with the parking, and we know ratios on number of cars per students now. How would that compare to number of cars per students in the end? And then finally, before we go too far afield, because we're all kind of throwing in everything we want in this thing, and we're really getting excited about it, we shopped the 5-bedroom with the pool, the 4-car garage, the maid service, and the granny quarters. Okay, maybe the granny quarters has got to go. Once you see the price tag, you start making some big decisions. Maybe we don't need 0.75 and X number of square feet, maybe 0.5 and Y number of square feet, because it would move it from X number of million down to Y number of million that first time around. So I think it's the board's, responsibility to kind of ask those big picture questions and get the summary sheet on this right away so we can kind of see the order of magnitude. I realize it's fluid, but I kind of like that big picture.
Trustee Martin, I understand what you're saying, but I really think it's vital that a draft of the plan be allowed to be put together. Because if we start pricing things out, if we start putting numbers out there, that becomes the focus. What we're trying to do is take a holistic view of what should our campus look like. And I am very reluctant to have the number out there too early, because then that becomes the focus. And so it's not that the costing isn't going to happen. The cost of all of this is absolutely part of what they do. But we've got to get to a point where all of the stuff they were talking about is in draft form, has a lot of the data that you're asking for, because they have a parking person, they have a sustainability plan, they've got all of that, and that's going to be in that draft that the community will see. But if we start attaching numbers, then it becomes about the number and not about what is the need.
Okay, I think you're almost saying some of the same thing I'm saying. Let me parse what I said carefully. Okay, so the first thing I asked for was a summary of now and then, just to understand what we're trying to go. And you provided it in FTES. In a way, you said 24,000. So I believe what you did tonight was an awesome step one. I think it's awesome. I would equate it to the family sitting down together and saying, we need another parking spot, only one car's fitting in the garage. We need another bedroom. This is what we need, this is what we need, this is what we need. I think that's the very, very appropriate step one. And the only thing I added was this is a little more complicated, so I was hoping to get a summary of now and then. Once that is complete, it seems the next appropriate step is we kind of need to have some level of order of magnitude of what are all the things that the family wants in the new addition going to cost us, so that we can appropriately say and make priority decisions. Because if the order seems to be stretching a little larger than what we had originally hoped, we will have to trade off the 3rd-car garage versus the pool.
Right.
So I think I'm with you. I was just asking for that summary now, complementing where we are and saying at some point in the near future, on a very fast-moving plan, we need to kind of get that.
If I may, we're going to have the draft complete plan, including costing and comparisons, the whole draft plan in the next few weeks. And then we will start our vetting process and sharing it with town halls on the campus, reaching out to the community, and the board will have a draft plan, so you would be able to have the printed word along with the diagrams.
Well, you're saying you're going to do what I was...
Yeah, but it's going to be complete. We're going to give you the whole package.
Yeah,
next.
and that's exactly what I'm asking for.
And then after we do our town halls and sharing the document, and we feel the document is now complete, like with the educational master plan, we worked with people, it's now complete, then it will go through the campus vetting process before the board takes action on it. So we hope to have a document in February, a draft, and then we'll start proofreading it and making corrections and if needed, and then we'll be working with our town halls and sharing the document. And then we'll vet it.
So let's replay what you said and what I said real slow and see if we are in sync or not.
Yeah.
So my concern is that it goes out across the world and community, and everybody is just sold on this thing and loves it dearly, and the price tag comes back in $1 billion. Okay, that might be a problem.
Yes.
Okay, so someplace, as you're wrapping it up and getting the wrapping on and all that, someplace there's some cost things that I think might need to just come back through to the board in a general order of magnitude that says this is what we think we need, this is what it's going to do, ballpark idea, 24,000 FTES, increase in non-credit, blah, 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 and this is the approximate give or take 100 million tag that is going to go along with it. Now, so...
Let me, thank you, Trustee Martin. Let me just interject with a quick comment and then continue on with questions from all of the trustees. We are on a tight timeline, and so we're all trying to work together to get this with the end goal in mind. And so that's one of the points of friction, if you will. And on the other hand, this is the first time the trustees have seen this presentation, and we do have questions and comments or things that we'd like to see in this report. Let me just move on after having made that comment. I think our order is Trustee Sarkisian, and then Trustee Hilsman, and then Trustee Fellow, and we'll take it from there. Trustee Sarkisian.
Did Trustee Martin want to finish?
I think I made my point. I think I asked a question he didn't get to answer, but I think the chair had a reason for that. So I think it's your turn.
I won't cut you off. I just wanted to say I really enjoyed this report, and I appreciated getting the student like you guys coming to get student feedback. I was in on that meeting. I think the biggest thing that stood out to me was just like the timeline of what's the priorities, and I think the STEM building being up there is huge just because as a student, so I followed the presentation really easily just because I've been a student here for 3 years, and I've had a class in just about every building. And I think the STEM building being a priority is just important because of campus culture, and like we have this beautiful new art building, and then I have my STEM friends are in like bungalows, so that being a priority is very, very important. I think the student services building and the just parking just really echoes student needs. So just from a student perspective, I think I don't know if Tiana would agree with me. I think that came off really great.
All right, next we have Trustee Hilsman.
So, as in many cases of important decisions like this, the board has an interesting challenge and role to play. We are a policy-making body. We don't get into the weeds of put this building here, put that over there, any of that. So that's not our job, okay? I think that if we can, as a board, give you the kind of policy direction that you need to pursue the facilities plan, we've done our job, okay? So there is going to be discussion. I represent this area right around the college, and I know that there are neighbors who are not going to like this and not going to like that. This will come as news to you guys that sometimes the community has input on this. So this is the beginning of a discussion of all the possibilities that we can pursue with this plan. Now, I don't see a master plan as something that's written in stone. I see it as something that goes out for 10 years. And if X, Y, or Z things happen in the world, then we change the master plan. You know, if we don't like that building over there, or we can't afford it, we decide we're going to change it. Now, in terms of the financing, I like John's example, but there's one component of it that you kind of left out, which is how do you pay for this? Now, if you're like in my family, my wife says, well, we need a new roof, okay? So I said, okay, that's fine, that'll be $26,000. So maybe we won't take the trip that we were thinking about. So there's a trade-off. So one of the components here is what does the community want? Do they want a $1 billion project? Or do they want all these, bells and whistles, or something less? That's something that we're going to find out. And the thing about a bond is we don't have to spend it all at once. If we figure out that we've got a STEM building we like, but the neighbors don't like the pool where it is, so that'll save us some money, we'll leave it where it is. There isn't a single price tag. It's kind of a fluctuating price tag because it depends on what the community wants to come up with. So we don't know that yet, you see? So there isn't really a fixed price on this because it's a moving target. So however we come down on this early iteration and the discussions with the community about what they're willing to pay for is a dynamic. And that will continue for years, okay? So, I see this as extremely positive beginning of a discussion that's going to go on for a long time. And that's the way it should be, So I'm happy with where we are. I think we have to kind of reach a consensus about the policy aspect of it so that we can begin exploring the financing of it, and have that discussion. So that's where I stand, and I think that we are in general agreement about that, right? That we don't have a fixed price tag at this point. So that's no questions.
Thank you, Trustee Hilsman. Trustee Fellow.
I think I wanted to just say what Mr. Hilsman just said, and I agree with the president. This is really just a holistic approach of what the campus should look like, and I want to praise you for that. And I especially am very happy to see the Student Services building out in front of the campus instead of buried inside a campus. I think that's outstanding. But I think as this is going to be done in various phases, and we won't be going from one phase to another unless we have the funds, and I am a big proponent. We're going to have to go out for a $1 billion bond measure, perhaps, if the environment is right. But the money will come, but I'm not worried about finances right now. I think we'll do this in phases. If we have the money, the next phase will go through. But I think you did a great job, so thank you.
If I could just add one thought kind of related to the cost and to the evolution, that's something we should have kind of driven home that point at the beginning, that this is intended to be a living document, and it's intended to be a framework. We obviously are identifying some high-level needs for the campus in the next 10 years, but 5 years into that, there might be some changes to that in terms of enrollment projections or the growth of certain programs. And so the idea is that as time goes on, those assumptions are reconsidered, and that it serves as a guideline that can evolve over time. And with regard to the cost, there are so many factors that nobody can predict in terms of the construction market, what the economy is doing, the competitiveness, the type of pricing you get. And the way we approach estimating in general is that the scope of a project determines cost, but the cost can then also determine the scope. There needs to be a feedback loop. It's not a one-way street. And as time goes on, those conditions will help inform, essentially what you can get for X amount of money. So it really is meant to be fluid in the long term.
Trustee Martin.
Brave of you to call on me. So I think I'm slightly getting misinterpreted here, but I appreciate what you're saying. But I want to make a point. And the point is that as we move towards consideration of a potential bond to help with some funding, which we know is very critical for some current projects that are not completely funded, we will quickly reach a strategic decision that the college needs to make. And I like the way Trustee Hilsman is thinking, and I think it's wise, and it's true that we don't have to make every big decision right now and things can change. But what can't change is what we put on a bond initiative, on the next bond initiative that we say we are going to do. That cannot change because we have to do what we say we're going to do. So that, you got me thinking that I was thinking in terms of a comprehensive bond that was going to fund a 10-year master plan and try to get the kitchen sink and everything in there one shot for the next time. But if we do that, we are locked into doing all the things that we said we're going to do, even with great writers such as yourself that know how to write these things generically so that you get a little bit of wiggle room. There's still a lot of obligation. So you can adapt a second strategy of the next bond issue isn't comprehensive in trying to fulfill the whole plan. We're going to shoot for the STEM building or steps 1 and 2 or 1, 2, and 3 or whatever, and then reassess and at a later date potentially come in with a new bond issue that does steps 4, 5, and 6. But that's an important strategic decision this college is going to need to make, and what's probably criteria number 1 in whether we go comprehensive or parse it is the order of magnitude of the comprehensive, right? Because if the order of the magnitude is too big, that will lend itself to maybe smaller and more flexibility in the future. So I'm asking this question, and I know it's coming, and I know we're all working here together, and I'm really excited about the plan. I mean, I just love the thought process you're doing, and I love where it's going, and obviously huge questions on all these remote satellite sites, 2 or 3 we don't own, and
right.
Blah, blah, blah. But you can see why the cost question needs to get raised to some level of order of magnitude soon so that we can adapt an appropriate strategy and
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We are
Dr.
working.
Bush, go ahead. I cut you off before.
Thank you.
We are working to define the need to deliver the instructional program. Our college is one of the top 10 in the country. Our facilities are not. We want to close that gap. But then we look at what the need is. Then we look at the appetite of the community to finance it. What is the tax rate on $600,000? Is it $23 to $25 per 100,000, and is the taxpayers willing to do that? The third component is how fast can we implement this plan? We've whipped through it real quick, but it takes years to build a building. And you must spend, if we sell bonds, you must spend them in 3 years. So you cannot sell $1 billion worth of bonds.
Takes years to get through DS.
Dr. Juni has to teach classes. We need to put the population somewhere, and then we move into the next phase. And the board could decide we're going to the taxpayers for this chunk, and after we complete it, we'll go back out. But we'll have a direction, and it'll be purposeful as we're going through over the next 5, 10 years, we'll have a direction that the facilities are going, and we'll have cost parameters, and we could be working with our finance team to raise the capital.
Thank you, Dr. Bush. Trustee Hilsman and then Dr. Androgenis.
So I just was going to ask if Trustee Martin would agree to $888 million. Inside joke.
I will say, if I did, I would have more information on what it would go for now, after this presentation, than I did when it came to us originally.
Touche.
So,
Dr. Androgenis.
What I was going to say is that the interesting thing about doing the facilities master plan and identifying the projects that need to be done, and then ultimately getting the bond and going through the process, which I did, in like constant, from Oxnard College, where we built buildings, Mike and I built buildings, as well as at Valley. It's a living process, because what happens is, and I think I have been at Valley College a week, and I was presented with the faculty and the bond work group want to reorganize and reprioritize all of the bond projects. And part of it was born out of the fact that the district had asked for that, and there was a lot of controversy about it. And so we went through a 4-month process of looking at what were all of the projects that were still left. And at that point, the district had Measure A, Double A, and J, and they hadn't gone for CC yet. So we were working on bonds for 3 different bonds. And part of what drove that were campus conversations about what buildings belonged above the line, what buildings belonged below the line, meaning, if we fund this building or if we fund this project, that means something else has to come off. But then there's this other thing called the risk analysis, and that is that as you begin to engage in all of this building, you also have to set money aside for what's your risk. And as you start to complete buildings, the risk goes down, assuming that you don't wind up in litigation, which sometimes happens, and then more money becomes available through that whole process. Well, then we go back to the process again, and we look at how much money is left in this particular bond, what projects will it cover. So I completely appreciate your desire to understand the rough order of magnitude or the whole thing. And in some ways that is important. But I think probably where I'm coming from is that is knowing that the process I engaged in at 2 different institutions was one of constantly checking and rechecking this. So I think, and that gets to we have a full plan, and at some point in the process we figure out, okay, is it wise to go for the total amount, or do you break it down because you know that you're not going to spend it quickly enough, how construction is going, all of those kinds of things. So I think there's still a lot of iterations out there on that.
And much
to try to make you feel better.
Much of what you just said happened on Measure P.
Oh, and I believe that, yeah. But I think I just wanted to articulate that, I fully expect that will continue to happen. And I think it's part of our due diligence.
And I just think it didn't occur to me about the strategy on the all at one time or not, because I just kind of assumed we wanted to get it all at one time. And I go, if we're going to do that in November, we're going to start having some ideas of what it is.
Right.
But I understand we don't have to do that. There could be a better strategy. So
That would not be my preference. But
I don't know. Well, we just said it's a dynamic process. We don't know.
Yeah.
And we won't even begin to know until all the things Dr. Bush outlined get around.
I mean, I do think the politics of it play in, just honestly, on a bond measure like this. And one of the risks that you run, as I think that the president's pointing out, is politics is also a moving target. And if you have a community that is supportive you can't necessarily count on them to be supportive next year or next election or next election
The
cycle.
winds at our back, and
Yeah.
you make an argument for the comprehensive approach has some validity, the same reason that we want to get refinancing done when rates are low. So
Yes.
we're all here together on that, and that you're kind of making my point. We need to get the first order of magnitude so that we have a shot at doing that. So you're kind of arguing what I started this whole conversation on. So
Good.
thank you for helping.
Good team.
Okay, any further questions or comments from the trustees? Well, first of all, thank you to all of our presenters for coming in and presenting this. And again, I know that we're all working on tight timeframes, and this is a fast-moving process. And secondly, thank you to all the trustees for your comments and observations to help frame this. Yeah, so Trustee Chen-Lao asked if we can get a copy of the deck. I have some very granular presentation suggestions, and to avoid the risk of my superintendent saying that I'm micromanaging, I'll do those offline, with the idea of the next step being that we're going to present this to the public. So if we're all finished up with this agenda item?
Question. Is there a
Trustee
reason?
Brown.
Is there a reason why we did not get a hard copy for this presentation ahead of time? That's my question.
This was a very dynamic presentation being put together, and I believe they concluded the presentation around 4 o'clock this afternoon.
I see.
So
Before they got in the car and encountered 4
See?
accidents on the
Yeah.
way here.
Yeah, if we
I
would have
see.
had it earlier, we would have printed it, but it's based off of work staff did with them yesterday.
But we can get you the deck.
Yes, we'll get a copy of it and we'll get it out to you.
So for the future, could we make that be part of our protocol to always have things ahead of time so that Berlinda and other board members could really look at these stuff so we will have good questions or understand what we're talking about? That'll be my request.
Duly noted. Okay, thank you again, everybody. And we are going to get back on the agenda as originally ordered, and we're going to move to consent items. And first up is item D, which is consent items for students. And do I hear a motion for approval?
Move approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Student trustee.
Aye.
Fellow trustees, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. We are now going to move on to agenda item E, which is consent items for instruction. We have one item there. Do I hear a motion?
Move approval?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Student trustee.
Aye.
Fellow trustees.
Aye.
Okay.
I just don't know what we just voted on. What, under item E, number 1, approval of I consents?
Actually, there are no I consent
don't think
Oh,
items.
there
you know,
are
I'm,
any
I'm sorry, yeah, it's listed, but there are actually no items.
The thing that's listed is just the
Yeah.
title.
So
Yeah,
we'll
that's
we'll withdraw
confusing.
any motion and votes on that, and we'll
That's
move.
2 strikes,
Yeah.
Mr. Osling.
Probably more than that, but who's counting? We'll move on to agenda item F, consent items for business. Do I hear a motion?
I'd like to pull item 17 on the for the contracts to talk about that.
Okay, so what we'll do is we will vote on all of the consent items except 17 at the request of Trustee Chen-Lao, and we'll have a conversation or discuss, vote on that item separately. So do I hear a motion to approve all consent items for item F business except for item 17?
Move approval.
Motion to approve.
Second.
And moved and seconded. Student trustee.
Aye.
Fellow trustees?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously, and we will now move to consent item 17, F17, and trustee Chen Lao, you have the floor.
Yes, Dr. Bush seems to be the man of the hour for this board meeting. So on the contracts that have been listed on this list of bids, or not bids, excuse me, on contracts, my computer just went blank, so maybe that's an indication that I need to wrap this up. It's $150,000 for the bond advisor, and I may be getting these numbers not exactly in that order, $100,000 for the legal counsel. Would you just please explain, Dr. Bush, as you had to me earlier, about how you came about selecting these firms for the contract?
Absolutely. Just one point of clarification. It's a municipal advisor, not necessarily a bond advisor, municipal finance advisor.
Thank you.
Professional services such as financial advising, legal counsel, auditing do not require a competitive pricing process, whether that's bids or RFP. So it's an informal process. So the process that I engaged in consultation with Dr. Anajanis was we looked at who the district used in the past. Okay, you did use Fulbright,
Fulton Rose.
And you used K&N. And so we met with those individuals. Ann Rowland also came highly recommended from trusted colleagues. And she is currently bond counsel at Ventura Community College District, where I worked indirectly with her. She was an associate at the time of the last refinancing, and she actually did the work for BCC on the refinancing. And she's very familiar with the district and the college. And so I saw no need to make a change there. K&N, they had done work with the college, but when Eric and I met with the representative, they were not very responsive. And it could be some reorganization, and they're from up in Northern California now. We looked at some other, like Keygent and a few other advisors, but in checking references, they weren't as good a fit, and colleagues suggested that we meet with Blake, and we did, and he was a good fit, and both the underwriter and bond counsel have worked with him in the past, so it seemed to be a good team. And then we proceeded to look at and negotiate the contracts with them.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Trustee Martin.
So we're paying for these services to reduce the tax liability on the refinancing the bonds from general unrestricted funds. Is there a point where we can be reimbursed by the savings that we will incur?
Yes. They are part of the bond costs and will be paid out of the bond proceeds for the refinancing. And these amounts are what we may end up spending over the course of the year, not the cost of this refunding. Keep in mind, we have a delta to cover on the Serafian building, and we may need to do a COP. And so this contract would cover those costs also. So they're not getting paid this full amount for this refunding.
So any work they do for the bond refinancing can pay, but these unrestricted monies here are for other like Serafian and other projects. Is that what you said?
I believe it's an error to say that it's general unrestricted funds.
Okay.
My direction to purchasing was that it's being paid out of bond proceeds.
Okay.
And there is no account number listed with them because it'll be out of proceeds.
Okay, so so it will come out of bonds?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
it'll come
Let
out of
me
bond proceeds.
make a suggestion to the extent they're doing work related to the refunding and to the extent it's appropriate that it be paid from the proceeds for that. That would be billed as a separate bill and kept in isolation. And then to the
Right.
extent we're doing things
Yes.
that relate, to a
Yes.
COP or, okay.
Yes.
Absolutely,
Great.
they'd have to be separate.
Would it help you if we amended this to reflect what he just said or what you were trying to say? Or
Yes, what he just said.
I don't know how to amend it to say that what you just said, but.
I'll take a stab at it. I will move that we amend item F17 and only specifically for those two contracts. And again, that which is spent towards the refunding would be billed separately and reimbursed out of the refunding, and that which is spent on what might become a COP would be paid from the proceeds of that, and if it goes beyond that to the to a potential future facilities bond, we just keep all of those in separate pockets.
I would second that.
We have a comment from the audience. Please, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, please fill us in.
Okay, so what you're saying is correct. Fees associated, say, for the advice Blake's firm gives on the GEO is paid from the GEO bond proceeds. But when we come back in February, 16th, 19th, whatever? 19th, there will be a resolution. And in that resolution, there is a specific paragraph that talks about fees payable for that issuance. Likewise, if you ever do a COP or whatever financing structure you do for that Serafian building.
The U building.
There'll be another separate resolution that has costs identified for all of us, not just me, Blake, the lawyer, that says, hey, this is what these people are charging. And it ring fences, right? Ring fences those costs and it's, to those particular issuances. And that is practice in our line of work. For the district never to cut a check for costs out of the general fund, unrestricted general fund. It is always for it to be paid from bond proceeds, and it is always put in the resolution for you guys to approve.
But I think that as a matter of the public record, it's good to consider this amendment.
Yes, sir. No, I'm not saying don't.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that
Yeah.
you'll have your chance to.
Yeah.
They're ring fenced by the resolution.
Cool.
That's all I wanted you guys to know.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion. We don't have a motion on the floor. We have an amendment to approving this item. Do we have a motion to approve F17 as amended?
Okay, so moved.
Second.
Okay. Student trustee?
Aye.
Fellow trustees, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Mary, if you have any trouble getting that into the record, I'll try to help you. Good luck with that one.
You probably forgot what you
Okay.
said.
And I've lost my place. Are we on the P consent items
Yes,
now?
we are on P consent items.
Okay, and these are personnel items. Do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. No student trustee vote on this, so fellow trustees?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, and now we are finished with the consent items, and we're moving to the action items. Action item number 1 is to adopt resolution number 633, which is the authorization of a temporary interfund cash borrowing. Do we have any presentation on this, or Dr. Bush?
This is a routine matter that we take up every year, so if we get caught low on one of the funds in cash, we can borrow from the others.
Okay, thank you.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Student trustee?
Aye.
Fellow trustees?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. Item number 2 is to approve and adopt the fall 2020 academic calendar. Dr. Androgenis, any explanation?
Dr. Junie, would you like to say a word or two?
Dr. Junie. Or
Okay, good evening. So what is probably unusual about this particular board item is that we're asking you to approve just the fall side of the 2020-2021 calendar. And that's just because there's quite a bit of conversation about making significant changes to the winter-spring side of the calendar, and we need to get the fall side approved so that we can schedule next fall. The winter-spring side will be coming to the board a little bit later in the spring semester. I can walk you through it. I don't know if you want me to, or if you just have questions about the fall side. That's totally up to you what you want to hear or what you want to know. I mean, I can summarize it very quickly. The fall side, the proposal is to start it a week earlier than we have historically done, and that's just so that we actually get out with, you see all the green in December, yes. That the college would still be open. Students and faculty wouldn't be here, but that gives more opportunity for posting grades, having financial aid awarded, and also allowing classified staff, both grounds, ITS, and lab techs to break down fall and set up for winter without having to do that as overtime over the winter break.
Thank you for that explanation. Trustees, any questions? Do I hear a motion?
Motion to, I do have to say, I was interested in I was looking at
Dr.
your calendar.
Fellow, go ahead.
Looking at your calendar, I don't know how faculty could get, if you have a class of 100 with term papers, you just give them a few days.
To grade?
Yeah. I get at least a month, so that's great. So
I never got a month.
So Dr. Fellows, I really wish you didn't say that out loud.
Yeah. That's your inside voice.
They're more kind at the university. Thank you.
Nonetheless, are you going to move to approve this, Tony?
Yes.
Okay. Do we
I
have a second?
Second comment, actually.
Trustee Sarkisian.
I just wanted to, just for the future, I'm just thinking because it's going to be a week earlier, ending a week earlier. In general, the UC apps are due at the end of November, and I know that that'll be like finals will be approaching for students. So I don't know where the school would fall into this, but just letting professors know to just ease down on that, because I know as an art student, all my finals are a week before or even 2 weeks before, and that could conflict with UC apps. So just, I think, I agree, having it a week earlier is not going to make a major difference, but just letting professors know to bring it down a notch during that time.
Got that, Matt?
Moved and seconded. Trustee vote. Pardon me, student trustee vote.
Aye.
Fellow trustees.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We're moving on to item number 4. This is resolution number 634, commemorating African American History Month, February of 2020. Do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Student trustee.
Aye.
Fellow trustees.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I think you missed one.
Trustee Brown thinks I missed one.
Number
She did.
3.
I did.
Yes.
Thank you for keeping me
I just
on task.
realized
Am I up to 3 now?
No, this
Three.
is actually not your fault, because there is a modification of the credit curriculum that should have been under I, correct?
Right.
H3, approval of modification of the credit curriculum. It is physical sciences, 3.
That's an action item.
Oh, okay,
Yes.
so, but it wasn't on the consent calendar. It
shouldn't
was
be on the
added in
consent-
here.
No, curriculum is never on the consent calendar. It's always on an action item to allow the board to ask questions and discuss it before they approve it.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll move approval, no matter where it is.
I second.
Moved and seconded. Student trustee.
Aye.
Tired job.
Fellow trustees.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We are now on to number 4.
Right.
This is resolution number 634, commemorating African American History Month, February 2020.
I'll make a motion again.
We voted on that.
I think we voted on it, so number
Okay,
five.
we voted on that. I
That's
was
3 now.
Oh, I was out of order, so we'll skip right ahead to item number 5.
Motion to approve.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay. Student trustee?
Aye.
Fellow trustees?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. We're now back on information items, but we've already taken care of 1 and 2. We are on to number 3, and I see Dr. Bush heading to the podium. Again. This time with good news, I think, overall. Take it away, sir.
Okay, thank you so much. It was an exciting day, January 11th. The holidays continued, and the governor proposed a budget for us. The budget has 3 main themes. It's addressing affordability crisis, mainly in healthcare and housing, investing in emergency response for both homeless and wildfires, and promoting opportunities by increasing funding to preschools, public schools, higher education, and yes, we have a new department, Department of Early Childhood Development. Okay. The state budget is based off of continued slowing growth. So the state feels it's going to continue to grow. The general fund is predicted to grow by 2.6% through 23-24. Total spending is up in this budget by $7.4 billion, or a 3.5 increase. General fund spending is up $5.3 billion, a 3.6% increase, and very dear to us, Prop 98 is up $84 billion. There's $5.9 billion in discretionary resources, 4.1 in one-time spending in reserves, 1.4 billion in ongoing programmatic spending, and 300 million in other adjustments. Keeping with the slowing growth and the risks out there, there is still the looming recession. We had the Great Recession, and we've been in the Great Recovery for a number of years, but at some point it will turn. And there is a number of risks from the federal government, and with the interest rates, the federal economy with trade, and the reliance on the top 1% continues to be bothersome in this state to fund the government. And also, they are banking on federal approval of the state's managed care organization tax, which has not been granted yet, but we're building a budget on it. So, that aside, it is a fairly good budget for education. We're increasing, improving access to early learning and care, new Department of Early Childhood Development and additional preschools, investing in public education, 1.2 billion increase in local control funding formula, that's for the K-12, 900 million for educator recruitment and training, which we'll get part of, and nearly 900 million for special education. There is also, and they want increased access across higher education. There's a big focus at the UCs to increase access. There is a lot of economic issues in the Central Valley, and there's a number of education initiatives for that area. 40 million for UC Riverside and UC San Francisco medical schools to open up medical schools in the valley, and 17 million for the Fresno K-16 Collaborative, which is showing a lot of promise. Proposition 98 provides a minimum guarantee for school and community college funding. For those finance geeks, we're in test 1, which is 39% of the state budget. Although the formula determines total funding, the governor and legislature will determine the allocation. So there's always the possibility of getting some more. And
What does that mean that the governor and legislature would determine the allocation? So does that mean that they get to decide, they certainly don't get to decide which college would get more, or is it how
They could.
They could, okay.
They could. They have a funding formula, but colleges can get a special appropriation. But what this means is just because the Prop 98 calculation comes out, the governor can give us more. Both Governor Brown and Governor Newsom has given education money beyond Prop 98. And probably the biggest pot of money last year was when Governor Newsom bought down the retirement debt, the pension debt, for education. So we always remind our colleagues in Sacramento that Prop 98's minimum, not maximum, and that they can allocate more money. Okay. And in fact, this budget does have an outside allocation for rapid rehousing coming out of the Department of Housing for us. In determining Prop 98, the Department of Finance estimates the minimum guarantee, and these estimates cover prior, current, and budget years. And that's how we get a lot of our one-time money. They're looking at the current year and prior year as well as the out year, the budget year. And it's adjusted periodically for the settle up. Here's the Prop 98 estimates for both all Prop 98 and in particular the community college. You can see where overall it's going up 3%, but for community colleges we're going up 4%. There is a spreadsheet error in our Prop 98. Normally we get 10.93% of Prop 98, and it only came out to 10.92 because someone goofed on a cell. And the Department of Finance is committed to correcting that at the May revise. Okay. Good news is there's no changes to the Student Center funding formula this year. So we can actually take some time to look at how we're calculating it and confirm our data and hopefully work with the Chancellor's office to get a better understanding of what the formula is actually generating for the college as well as for the whole system. There is one slight change in the mix. Is the Oversight Committee has recommended they include a metric reflecting first-generation college students. Although it's currently not in the formula, both the governor has said he's open to it once they have base data to be able to forecast what that would mean. Here's the proposed local adjustments. And we have what the proposed is for the state, and then we're, of the system, we're roughly 2% by FTS. So whatever the state's saying, we rough estimate at 2%. With the exception of enrollment growth, we are estimating that we will not get money because we are still borrowing from summer to hit our base. So we're looking to even that out. We have various programs that are going to get COLA also, and this slide on ongoing appropriation would be about $4.8 million to us. Then we have some one-time money that comes from the settle-up funds and for various programs. Unclear if these are going to be competitive grant programs or straight allocations to the entitlements to the college, but there's about $1 million we'd be eligible for there. They are looking to balance by doing some one-time adjustments at the Chancellor's office, taking from the reversion counts from current year, 1920 budget year, and making it available next year. They're budgeting it out. And they have about 28 million in one-time adjustments they're doing. This will enable us to get more money for deferred maintenance and instructional equipment. They are looking to expand college affordability. In 2016, there was a grant program for zero textbook cost pathways or degree programs. They're expanding that by 10 million, and we may be a good candidate to apply for that grant. And they're looking for some changes in financial aid to make it more affordable. They're looking to meet student needs by expanding work-based learning. They are pushing out apprenticeships big time and making funds available for various apprenticeships, both at the K-12 and the community college. There is money to assist undocumented students, and there is 11.4 million ongoing for food pantry programs at community colleges. And this is a unique one that we're trying to get a handle on. There's $5 million for instructional materials for dual enrollment students. They're looking for fellowship programs for diversity, equity, and inclusion, and they're going to, on a pilot basis, have fellowship programs for current and recent graduate students, trying to encourage them to go into education and into teaching. And it's to increase our faculty diversity. There is one, I'll call it a red herring in the budget, where the system, they're going to have the California Community College System Support Program, which they're funding by taking money from across the state and taking it centrally to the chancellor's office. Mm-hmm. It's consolidating support appropriations into a single program. These are the programs they're looking at. They're looking at the administrative and statewide activities for student equity and achievement program, cooperating agencies for foster youth educational support, and strong workforce program. There are other state programs. They're taking all the money to the state. Instructional Effectiveness and Partnership Initiative, Integrated Technology, Transfer Education Articulation, and Expand Delivery Courses through Technology. What is unclear is how this is going to benefit the students at Pasadena City College. Mm-hmm. And
I think we know.
There's a lot of discussion, and the devil will be in the details, but it's unclear how taking everything centrally is going to benefit the students. Capital outlay, there's good news there. They are going to allocate $27.6 million bond funds for 24 new projects. They're from Proposition 51. They're looking at the new bond for inclusion in the spring proposal, and they are looking, if the measure is approved, the system will receive $2 billion of the $15 billion total. The chancellor's office gets maintained. They get to add one more accounting person, and they get $700,000 in one-time funds to support the cost of convening a work group on student athletes' compensation in the community colleges. So, expensive work group. Is there any questions?
Not really. Trustees, any questions for Dr. Bush?
I had one.
Trustee Sarkisian, go ahead.
Slide 13 for the undocumented students. I just wanted to ask, I don't know if this would be a question more for President Erica, would that factor into like funding for our Quest Center?
If we had that funding, that's where it would go. Okay. It would help fund our Quest Center and the services that we provide.
Sounds good.
But are these funds that we will have to apply to get?
I don't believe that's an application process. I think
No.
that was an allocation process, correct?
Correct.
Allocation.
What is the legal services that I'm unclear of, because those were in coordination with the universities? And where those services will be delivered, I'm unclear.
But the
Well, your
5.8
slide
million
says they'll be administered
is
through Department of Social
reallocation.
Services, so
Mhm.
I'm speculating those dollars won't flow directly to PCC.
Correct, but it's a matter of, will the legal services be here on campus for our
I see.
students?
Mm-hmm.
So they haven't figured that out.
No.
Okay.
A lot of this is new money in a proposal, and we don't know how the legislature is going to write the law or whether it'll be in the May revise. There currently is legal services available for undocumented students, and I believe the services are delivered differently depending on the colleges the students attend.
I see. Thank you.
Okay. No further questions. Thank you again, Dr. Bush.
Okay.
Okay. And we are on our final information item. As usual, this is the Superintendent President's Report.
Okay,
Fire
great.
away, Dr. Androgenis.
Thank you, Trustee Osterling. My first report out is to say that Dr. Bell's surgery yesterday was successful. He had spinal surgery, and I got a text from his wife after he came out of surgery. The surgeon was very happy with how things went, and so he is on the road to recovery, and per request before the meeting, we'll be sending flowers on behalf of the board and the college to Dr. Bell. I do not believe he was going to be in the hospital very long, so I think we'll be able to do that. And Happy New Year to everyone, and I want to thank everyone who came out to the investiture ceremony last week. I was honored to be recognized by the college, and thanks to the trustees and everybody for the vote of confidence in actually doing it and getting me some serious bling. And thanks to everyone who gave input into the program. Dr. Fellow, you were a big part of that, as well as Trustee Osterling and members of the PCC Foundation Executive Committee. Alex and Bobby did a lot of work on the ceremony, and I can tell you, Dion, that people have said how much they loved your speech. They thought you were awesome. So, especially my family, they were like, man, she is cool. Yeah. And some of my family did take the over-under on you, so just so you know. I also want to say the students did a great job. The fanfare, trumpets, and the students in the choir who sang were wonderful, and I just keep chuckling about the fact that after the ceremony, Jack Scott said that was the first time he'd ever heard the alma mater of the college, and that was a big surprise. And Bob Miller said the same thing, never heard the alma mater, so all things are new, I guess. We also hosted last Wednesday, our college hosted a community forum by ACT, and basically it was an opportunity for folks around the community to hear from candidates for who are running for office at the moment. And we welcomed a bunch of folks to campus, always happy to do that. Our winter term started last week, and our enrollment is up over last year, correct? Dr. Junie? Still the case?
That's correct, yes.
Yay. Okay. Our enrollment for spring is building, but spring doesn't start until February 18th, so there's a lot of time. And, we're doing everything we can to get those, keep those cards and letters coming and the students coming through the door, so that's good. We recently learned that diverse issues in higher education compiled some rankings, and Pasadena City College performs very strongly. These are based on 2017-18 figures. We are first in California and fifth in the nation in terms of minority students earning associate degrees.
We are first in the nation?
We are first in California and fifth in the nation. We had our strongest year-to-year growth in this metric, 31% increase in the number of minority students earning an associate's degree. We are first in California and in the nation in the number of degrees awarded to Asian American students.
Wow.
First in California, first in the nation. And we are first in California in the number of degrees awarded to Latinx students. So that's data, folks. It's all good. Last night, the San Marino Unified School Board approved its dual enrollment agreement with Pasadena City College.
Yay.
And so we'll bring that action forward to the board next month. And I'm actually having breakfast with the superintendent from San Marino Unified School District on Friday to talk about some dual enrollment possibilities. So we're moving right ahead.
So it comes to us to sign.
Right,
Or-
to sign, because we Terry, you want to?
So normally it would be coming to you around the same time as the high school. There's a change in the law in regard to the MOUs for dual enrollment. And so as of January 1st, it now only requires once. So the board can actually approve it the first time it comes, as opposed to the way it used to be, you had to do a first read before you could approve it at a second meeting. San Marino started the process at their December board meeting, so thus they had to bring it back for another read, and so they did it in December. They asked for some changes, and then they approved it last night at their board meeting, and Dr. Asageda was there to answer any other questions for them in that regard. And so we were kind of waiting at this point, since we could wait till January, only bringing it to you once, to make sure that we had tweaked it the way that San Marino was asking before we brought it to you.
Great, thank you.
Let's see. And then we are exploring a partnership with Dr. Sean Harper from USC, who was the Pasadena City College commencement speaker in 2018, to dig more deeply into equity practices across the college. We have a special arrangement with him in terms of we'll get 5 years of very targeted training for leaders and equity across the college in a whole host of topics, including resolving racial tensions, strategic planning, recruiting, hiring, and retaining staff and faculty of color, and disaggregating data, and all kinds of things. So stay tuned on that. We've got more coming. Faculty member Sheila Rose hosted a career communities retreat Friday and invited 30 faculty members that are leading services in the 6 areas in our 6 career community areas: STEM, liberal arts, health sciences and wellness, social and behavioral sciences, business and industry, and arts, communication, and designs. And this is basically our guided pathways, our approach to guided pathways. Last Saturday, we hosted the Elite Invitational, it was an Elite Invitational basketball tournament all day on Saturday. And in the evening, we were fortunate to host 2 games between the girls' game and the boys' game, between Sierra Canyon and Rancho Christian. And my daughter Ava and I came. It was streamed on ESPN3, and it was live on KDOC. And the reason is because the Sierra Canyon team includes a freshman and a sophomore. The freshman is Bronny James, the son of LeBron James, who is an amazing basketball player. And then it also included Zaire Wade, who is the son of Dwayne Wade. And Ava and I were lucky enough to get a picture with him. Vivica Fox was in the audience. And I mean, it was quite the start. We also had Trippie Redd, for those of you who know rappers. Trippie Redd was there. My daughter was all excited. And the other player who's actually playing on the Rancho Christian team, it was Evan Mobley, who is the #1 recruit across the country, and he is going to, that's right, USC in the fall. So fight on, baby. It was a full house. There were 3,500 people in the gym, and it was awesome. It was so fun. Coming up next week, we are looking forward to the board retreat, folks, at the Athenaeum, 2 to 6 on Tuesday. Fun, fun, fun. On Thursday, January 30th, the Red, Black, and Green dinner will be happening. I believe you've all received an invitation. We have purchased 3 tables for the college, and so anybody who can go, I'm looking forward to it. On Saturday, January 25th, we are at our college hosting Skills USA Region 3 Leadership and Skill Conference, and that is an opportunity to have 2,300 high school students come to our campus for technical contests and leadership workshops in the CTE area. And then upcoming between now and the time we meet again on February 19th, different groups of us will be going to Sacramento to do legislative advocacy with our state legislators. And then that's at the end of January. And then February 8th through the 11th, we are in DC doing advocacy with our federal legislators, at least those of whom are not sitting in a gallery watching an impeachment trial. And that concludes my report. Or conducting one, right. We may not get to see Congressman Schiff, depending on how things go. So, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Andojanis. We are now going to turn to announcements by shared governance representatives, and we will start on my right, Ms. Dion Shelton.
Hello.
Associated Students.
Oh, yeah. That's me. As President Erica said, that winter session is underway, and it is actually the second week, or almost through the second week, and it's kind of happening fast. Again, as President Erica said, I had the pleasure of speaking at her investiture ceremony last week on Tuesday, and I had a good time, and I'm glad that your family enjoyed my speech. If it wasn't for Alex and his joke writing skills, I don't think they would have loved it as much, but shout out to him for that. But moving on to the business side of stuff. I had a meeting with Dr. Olivo this Monday with Alex and just Alex, not Frida, JK. And we spoke about upcoming events that we're going to be planning, like for Black History Month and in March to celebrate Women's History Month, or I think, yes. And then we are changing some of our constitution, AKA we are drafting some new amendments just to align with our mission statement that I gave you all earlier this year. We will be establishing the general election spring timeline. The process will begin in late April this semester and end in May. Usually, the process is done by April, but we the old timeline conflicted with like finals and midterms and things like that, so we wanted to give the students breathing space between that. And this coming weekend, we will be going on our AS retreat, which will be at Eaton Canyon and at the Embassy Suites in Arcadia, where we will be working on team building and bonding and planning for the spring semester. Thank you.
Thank you, Dion. Classified Senate, Mr. Jonathan Lim.
We have nothing to report this month. Thank you.
Thank you. Management Association, Mr. Tito Altamirano.
I'll take up his time. No, I do want to say thank you. And while the year is young, there's lots to recognize. First off, congrats to the 7 managers who are listed on this board packet. Rudy Perez as Interim Supervisor for Facility Services, Denise Carter, our Welcome Center Director, Tunisia Bailey, Supervisor of Campus Events, Will Sims as our Acting Associate Dean for Non-Credit, Carol Calandra, I'm not sure if she's still here, for our Interim Director's Veterans Resource Center, Stefan McGrew, Acting Talent Search Coordinator, and once again, Dr. Raquel Torres Retana as our Dean of Rosemead site. And I want to continue by saying thanks to a couple of managers who've served the college lately and in long term, starting off with Todd Hampton, who is on your board packet. He has served the college since July 1st, 2014, as a manager of the IT support services and for a term as a vice president of the Management Association. So we wish him well on his new endeavor. Natalie Russell, Lenora Rojax, Jesse Wang, and Kerry Starbird. Thanks to them for their continued work as chairs on their work on the Institutional Self-Evaluation Report, otherwise known as the ICER, to make sure that we're on track and ready for accreditation. To Tamika Alexander for helping organize a successful Harvard Global Networking Night, which I was at earlier, in collaboration with the Harvard Latino Alumni Alliance here on campus, where a room full of students took advantage of this event. Also, thanks to Carl Schaefer, Don Ekman, Sarah Flores, David Van Pelt, and Rudy Perez, our facility supervisors, for helping get PCC back on track after a little-known event known as the Rose Parade, and for updating many areas of the college. And lastly, big congratulations is in order to Brenda Trejo, who's our director of the Child Development Center, and her staff for working hard to renew their accreditation with the NAEYC, the National Association of Education for Young Children, with a recognized score of 100%. With that finalizes my report. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Tito. And Academic Senate, Dr. Matt Hennis.
Good evening. We're not in session, and so there's not a lot to report. I have no news for you, but I do want to acknowledge that the board did accept 2 retirements, both for 19 years of college service. Rosemary Scott, who's been a staple in our DSPS service, and James C. We are welcoming 7 adjunct faculty in 6 divisions, and I'm working with Dr. Bush to plan one of the aforementioned town halls for the facilities master plan to take place likely in the first week of February to allow constituents to give some feedback and, for my part, to allow faculty to give their input to the current draft. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. We'll go now to trustees. We're going to start on my far left with student trustee Alex Sarkissian.
Alrighty, so first off, with all the fiscal economic talk today, my high school econ class came in handy. It was like understanding 5% of what's going on, but it was great. So not a lot to report, but at the end of winter break, we finally found our vice president for academic affairs. Yes. Her name is Urani Reyes. She previously served as our VP for cultural diversity, and we selected her on a lot of great reasons, but it was also important that we had someone that understood the campus to really be effective in that job at academic senate meetings and such. Also this week, I'll be releasing ad hoc committee applications. I'll be having one of about 5 students focused on organizing Trustee Tuesdays. At the next meeting, I plan on doing a presentation just to let you all know about what the event will be. I met with President Erica just to fine-tune it and make sure it's chef's kiss perfect for all of you. And finally, we have a couple trips coming up as students. Most of them you all will be at. So the CCLC Annual Conference, Sacramento. Dion, myself, Frida, and our Lobbies Committee Legislative Director, Kimberly, will be attending. And then in mid-February, the National Legislative Summit in DC, myself, Dion, Frida, and our Chief Justice, David, will be attending. And finally, in March, our entire Student Lobby Committee will be attending the ASAC conference in DC, which is from March 14th to 17th, which we approved today, I believe. So that is all. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Moving on, Trustee Chen Lao.
I'd like to wish everyone a happy new year, but also a happy Lunar New Year. It's a year of the rat. The rat is the first sign of the zodiac, and it also represents achievements and rewards. So I'm looking forward to hearing a lot more achievements and accomplishments in the year ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. Trustee Fellow.
I just would like to just adjourn in memory of the coach that died, Tisa.
Yes, we will do that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Moving to my far right, Trustee Martin.
No, nothing. Thank you.
Brown.
No report.
Trustee Hilsman, we're on a roll here.
I have no report, but I think I'm a rat.
You are. Well, it'll be a good year for you.
Thank you. Good.
Okay, finally, we get to the moment we've all been waiting for. I'll make just a couple of brief comments. Most of the rest of us have to be here, but I have to commend all you hardy souls out there in the audience that made it all the way through this. If it's any consolation, city council meetings typically go well into the next day. So we had some spirited conversation on an important topic, and we're running a little bit late. I just want to comment that I'm really glad that we're going to have our students attending our legislative summits in Sacramento and Washington. And as I always say, but it's true, our elected representatives don't really want to hear from us boring old people. They really want to hear from you students. So I'm glad we were able to get schedules aligned and have students join us in Sacramento and Washington. Looking forward to that. It's already been commented on, but we finally got Dr. Androgenis investitured, and Dr. Bell, yes, Dr. Bell reports that actually, rare event, I made the under on the president's speech, and everybody noticed that real smooth move where I put the bling on Dr. Androgenis.
You were very good, yeah.
That's the end of my comments, and we are going to adjourn in memory of longtime PCC basketball coach George Terzian. And without further ado, this meeting is adjourned.